Donald Trump's current Labor Secretary, Alex Acosta, is currently defending himself following the very serious charges that Jeffrey Epstein is facing by federal prosecutors. Now, the reason why he is mixed up in this story is because he actually served as the prosecutor in the Epstein case over a decade ago. But what he did was something that raised a lot of red flags. As prosecutor, he actually pushed for a non-prosecution plea deal without even notifying the victims that he was supposed to be representing. And so there have been a number of Democrats, Democratic leadership who are calling on him to resign, and he's responded to that, saying the following: "The crimes committed by Epstein are horrific, and I am pleased that New York prosecutors are moving forward with a case based on new evidence. With the evidence available more than a decade ago, federal prosecutors insisted that Epstein go to jail, register as a sex offender, and put the world on notice that he was a sexual predator." He continues to say, and this is all through Twitter, "Now that new evidence and additional testimony is available, the New York prosecution offers an important opportunity to more fully bring him to justice." Now, the wording here is important to pay close attention to, because there was ample evidence in the prosecution previously, 10 years ago, the case 10 years ago, where Acosta could have very easily pursued a case against him. But instead, he went behind the backs of the very victims who he was supposed to represent and worked with the defense attorneys on this non-prosecution deal, which allowed Jeffrey Epstein to essentially get off with a slap on the wrist. And the reason why I say that is because even though they gave him a 13-month sentence, prison sentence, he was able to leave 6 days out of the week to go to work. He was able to leave for 16 hours out of those 6 days, right? And so he registered as a sex offender, but it wasn't really a harsh criminal sentence, especially considering the fact that he didn't have to plead guilty to the serious charges that were brought against him. He had to plead guilty to much lesser charges.
Okay, look, let's keep it real, guys. So whether Acosta did this because he was covering up for government officials who might have been connected to Epstein, or whether he got his job as Labor Secretary now because he was rewarded for those cover-ups, put those aside for a second, we'll come back to them. Under no circumstance does this deal make any sense. If someone you know had been charged with molesting and sexually assaulting and raping underage girls, is there any chance they would have only gotten a 13-month sentence? Is there any chance that they would have said, hey, well, you know what? I'm a dentist, I gotta go to work, so I'm gonna take 6 out of the 7 days off my prison sentence. And the prosecutor would say, oh yes, sir, of course, sir. 6 out of the 7, you only serve 1 day in prison, sir. And by the way, the days that I come in to sleep in the prison, I'm only gonna come in for 8 hours just from when I'm sleeping. I'm gonna use it like a hotel. No one, I mean, forget dentists, that's middle class. There's no way they'd let him do that. Imagine if you're poor. I mean, these are not conversations that anybody would have. The only reason he got that deal is because he's rich and connected, and everyone knows it. There's not a person in the country that could deny that. So is that the kind of person we want as our labor secretary who goes, oh yeah, I crushed the poor and the middle class, but when it came to the rich, I gave them everything they wanted, no matter how many young girls they molested. Is that who you want as your labor secretary? So that's of course unconscionable. Of course he should step down, but then that gets us to the interesting question of why that guy was hired in the first place.
So let's go to video of Trump addressing this whole case.
Well, you know, I met Secretary Acosta this first time I know when I made the deal to bring him on into the administration. I can tell you that for 2.5 years, he's been just an excellent Secretary of Labor. He's done a fantastic job. What happened 12 or 15 years ago with respect to when he was a US attorney, I think in Miami, is it Miami?
Yes,
you know, if you go back and look at everybody else's decisions, whether it's a US attorney or an assistant US attorney or a judge, you go back 12 or 15 years ago or 20 years ago and look at their past decisions, I would think you'd probably find that they would wish they maybe did it a different way. I do hear that there were a lot of people involved in that decision, not just him. I can only say this from what I know, and what I do know is that he's been a great, really great Secretary of Labor. The rest of it we'll have to look at. We'll have to look at it very carefully, but you're talking about a long time ago.
I mean, how many members of Trump's administration get ousted or have been ousted already because of their mistreatment of women. In the case of Acosta, it's not him mistreating the women, except as prosecutor, he kind of did, because the victims were women who deserved fair representation, but Acosta went behind their backs and pursued this non-prosecution deal.
And by the way, just so you're clear on the plea deal, legally he was supposed to tell the victims before it got finalized. He hid it from them, which a judge has already ruled as illegal and said it was the wrong thing to do. He violated the law. He didn't want the victims finding out because he knew that they wouldn't be in favor of this outrageous plea deal that he had negotiated. He then turned around to the victim and said, too late, I already made the deal.
See, but okay, so a judge rules that what Acosta did was wrong, that it was illegal. But we talk about how unfair the justice system is. Other than saying what he did was wrong and illegal, what happened to Acosta?
If you do something illegal, you go to prison. If a government official or a rich person does something illegal,
they become labor secretary.
That's right. And so theoretically, the Justice Department back in February opened up an investigation of Acosta on these grounds. And we're in July. I don't know how that investigation is going, but the Trump administration assures us, don't worry, we're investigating ourselves very thoroughly. And look, here's an important point. A lot of people got onto Trump's cabinet because they did favors for Trump in his past life. So Wilbur Ross did financial favors for him involving banking. He's now the Commerce Secretary. Steve Mnuchin had deals with Donald Trump. He's now the Treasury Secretary. Rex Tillerson had a deal with the Russians when he was CEO of ExxonMobil that was worth $500 billion. He becomes Secretary of State. Carl Icahn, he wanted to get involved in his government. Carl Icahn bailed him out along with Wilbur Ross earlier in his life. Otherwise, one of his bankruptcies would have ended his career completely. So when he becomes president, he looks to do favors for people who have done favors for him in the past.
You're absolutely right, and that explains why in the video you just watched, Trump referred to appointing Acosta as making the deal.
Yeah, what deal? That's a great question.
Yeah.
See, Trump always accidentally admits what he's doing because he's not smart enough to cover up. And so that's why Mueller showed about 12 instances of him obstructing justice blatantly, because he's not even smart enough to realize he's doing a cover up. So he blurted it out there. So out of all the people in the world, to pick Acosta as labor secretary is at a minimum weird. And so I hope, look, we're not like the right wing. We hope that there's further investigation, see if they could find out if there was a deal, right? Now, my God, if it was Obama and his labor secretary, there would already be a million conspiracy theories and they would be absolutely positive and they would make stuff up on top of things. You don't need to make anything up about this. What Acosta did is already unconscionable. And Trump, even if there was no secret deal with Acosta, picking him makes no sense and is unconscionable. He should be immediately fired. But I hope the reporters do delve further to see if they can find any details of why he was picked in the first place.
Now, as we know, Jeffrey Epstein was tied to many powerful individuals, including Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, the Saudi crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman. Now, a lot of these powerful people are doing some damage control, including Donald Trump. Take a look.
Well, I knew him like everybody in Palm Beach knew him. People in Palm Beach knew him. He was a fixture in Palm Beach. I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan. I was not, a long time ago. I'd say maybe 15 years. I was not a fan of his, that I can tell you.
You know, a lot of these politicians didn't bother doing their math, because 15 years ago is 2004. He did all the molestation that he was charged with in this case between 2002 and 2005. So that would put Trump's friendship with him smack dab in the middle of the molestations and sexual assaults. Oops, that's what happens when you don't prepare. Just do a little bit of math before you come out and lie to everybody. And so, by the way, why were all these guys palling around with him? Now, one theory is because they were participating. Okay, but even if you don't get to that, and it's just a theory at this point, people don't have enough evidence on it yet. The other reason is because he's rich. So Trump likes rich people, and he's not rich himself, so he looks up to rich people. So he's like, ooh, Epstein's actually rich. Oh, can I get a ride on your Lolita Express? That was the nickname of Epstein's jet. Gee, I wonder if they could tell that he was into young girls. In fact, we showed you the quote yesterday of Trump saying, Epstein's really into beautiful girls, even and really young ones. So he knew all along, right? Why the politicians? Because back then Trump not a politician, but Bill Clinton was. Because they want the bribes. So they go kiss the ass of all the billionaires so they can get campaign funding. And Clinton used Epstein's plane on a number of occasions. So even if he's out of office, he used it during the Clinton Foundation. And he says, I only used it 4 times in a statement that he put out today. Well, Gawker back in 2015 found flight logs showing him using it at least a dozen times. So what is he hiding? But they all get to be friends with these billionaires because that's the guys that they have to say, I'll give you anything. I'll give you tax cuts. I'll deregulate Wall Street. What do you need, Jeffrey? What do you need? Please give me money. And that's why Clintons and don't get me wrong, all the Republicans, etc., they all go and serve these sick rich guys. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.